Hi, Sid Roth here with Pastor Robert Heidler, graduate of Dallas Theological Seminary, who has studied what the first church was like. Now, why would we want to know what the first church was like? Well, they had intimacy with God. They heard God's voice. They didn't value anything compared to intimacy with God. They walked in signs and wonders and miracles. The least believer walked in these signs. It was not a superstar system. They all had the superstar inside of him, Jesus. And we found out that this fellow Constantine had a merger of paganism and Christianity. And the vestiges are still with us today. So, question is postured, Robert Heidler. Paint a picture to me about what it was like before the mixture came in.
Okay, well, so let's imagine we're walking down a street in the city of Rome. It's around the year 90 AD, and you're going to visit an early church. Of course, they met in homes. There weren't church buildings. Doesn't mean a church building is wrong, but that's not what they chose to do. But we walk up to a house, and we walk in the door, and what we see is not like anything we have ever imagined church to be. There's no special clothing worn. There's no hymn books. There's no pews. There's no pulpit. The building doesn't have a steeple on top.
Crosses?
No crosses. As we walk in through the door, what we see, we look around.
Is there a platform built for them at least?
Not a platform built. As a matter of fact, the church takes place in the large open courtyard, which most homes had at that time. And there was an open courtyard in the middle of the home. We walk into it, and it looks like there's a party going on. They're playing flutes and lyres and tambourines. They're dancing Jewish-style ring dances. And we look around, we think, did I come to the right place? This doesn't look like church.
They're really having fun.
They're having fun. It's exciting. And we walk in, and then we listen to the words, and we realize they're singing about Yeshua. This is church. And you read many historical descriptions of the early church that it was typical for them to begin with just a prolonged period of joyful singing, dancing. That was just a typical way for them to start church.
Did they have a worship team, so to speak, like we have today?
I imagine they knew who could play, and they knew
But I don't think they were all set on a bandstand.
They probably didn't have. No. It was very free, it was very open, it was very joyful. And if that didn't surprise us enough, the next thing they would do would surprise us even more, because when that slowed down and stopped, the next thing they'd do is start bringing out food. And people would sit down together and have a meal together. It's called the agape. The New Testament describes that. And they would eat together, they would fellowship together, they would share about the Lord in the process. And because it was a family, they knew each other, they loved each other.
You know, I like to use the word mishpacha, which is a Hebrew word that means family. And in studying your manuscript, that's what we lost by substituting the Greco-Roman roots for the Jewish roots. The whole family thing. I mean, it was so rich.
Yes.
I mean, I feel robbed.
You should. We have been. Things that God wanted us to have.
So they had this meal, and let me tell you, chicken matzo ball soup, potato kugel, you don't know, gefilte fish with horseradish, you don't know what heaven is till you've had Jewish food. Now, you don't have to like the Jewish food. However, what else happened?
Well, as they continued on, they would worship, they would sing, and at some point, and the Bible describes this, it says that when the power of the Lord is present, there would come a time in the midst of this when the Spirit of God would just drop down in a very tangible way. And as that happened, miracles began to take place. Irenaeus describes even at the end of the 2nd century, it was very common for healings in tongues, prophetic words, miracles. He said it was even common to see people raised from the dead by the prayers of the church. And the Spirit of God would, I sort of picture it this way, you know, you're sitting there and you're looking, and there's a family in the back, and they look very uncomfortable. They've never been here before. They have come because their daughter has contracted a disease that's left her blind, and they have nowhere else to turn to, but they have a friend that's a Christian that invites them to church. And they bring their daughter in, and when the Spirit of God falls, people gather around, they begin to pray for her, and suddenly she begins to weep and cry and say, I can see, I can see.
Could you picture her running throughout the neighborhood saying, I can see, I can see. I just went to Shlomo's house over there. It was so good, the gefilte fish and chicken vegetable soup, and miracles happened. Never happened in my synagogue. Okay.
And soon the whole family's saved. And we think that sounds like a dramatic thing, but as you read, that is what saved most people in the Roman Empire. Even historians say it's the power of the church to heal and deliver that caused people to want to brave the threat of persecution
now,
to come to know this Yeshua.
In Israel, were many people becoming believers?
Oh, yes. You look at the church in Jerusalem, it started with 120, moved up to 3,000. And by Acts chapter 4, it was probably over 10,000. It said there were 5,000 males in the church by that time. And many have estimated by the martyrdom of Stephen, it would be up to 20,000. When Paul comes into Jerusalem in Acts chapter 19 or 20, James comes up to him and says, look how many tens of thousands of Jews have come to believe in Yeshua and are zealous for Torah.
Can this be recaptured again? I believe yes. I was so fascinated with this unpublished manuscript by Robert Heidler. We're making it available. And I believe that if we stop changing and go back to the way God created it to be, we'll get the same results. Makes sense? Makes sense to me. Don't go away. You're going to find out some mixture that came into the church, which is robbing us of miracles. Be right back.